Good evening, if everyone can hear me, I hope. Yes. Hi, Chris, how are you? Good evening. I'm going to get going very quickly, just for everybody, because I am conscious that we have gone past 7 o'clock already. So thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. Obviously, as you all know, it's the Hemel and St Albans Property Network, normally run every second Tuesday of the month, but obviously since lockdown, it has been pretty much every other day. I'm just going to run through some house rules before we get going. She says. So this evening, just to let you know, it is being recorded. So anybody that doesn't want their face on the screen, just put your names up or your emojis up. Please keep yourself muted whilst our guest is speaking. It just helps to keep the flow going. And then any questions, put them in the chat box and then we can have a look at them afterwards. If you've got any questions at the end, please feel free. We're not a huge group tonight, which is quite nice. So it'll be a bit of an open forum to have a conversation with Stuart afterwards. Just to let you know, we don't have any planned fire alarms this evening. So should your fire alarm go off, please make sure that you walk to your nearest exit. Thank you. And your host and myself obviously can't give individual advice tonight. We can just give general information and advice. Like I say, this is being recorded and it will be available later on our YouTube channel. So our YouTube channel is Hemel Property TV with the hashtag HPTV, and that's on YouTube. And what I'm going to do for you now is just move on quickly to our legal update, and then I will move on to introduce Stuart to you this evening. So all I'm going to speak about very briefly this evening is obviously the new pre-action protocol that has been brought in for evictions. Now, this will come into force on the 23rd of August. Now, that's when the courts basically reopen again. And it will be temporary legislation that will stay in force until the 28th of March 2021. But we do know that there are review clauses in there, so it's possible that it could be retracted a few months before then. It affects all claims that are currently suspended in court. Now, this is claims that have been put in after a notice has been served. It doesn't affect if you've already been issued your possession notice or you've already got an eviction. It doesn't affect those. Those will carry on as normal. What you will need to do from the 23rd of August is submit what's called a reactivation notice. Now, this will need to be in writing and it needs to be sent to both the court and the tenant, explaining what you want to do. So it will say something along the lines of, "Dear Mr. Judge, I want to relist my hearing," and in that reactivation notice, you'll also have to put in all the information that you know about your tenant's situation and how COVID-19 has affected them, including their dependents. So if you know they've been furloughed, if you know that they've gone on to universal credit, all that information must go into the reactivation notice. Now, the other key point of the reactivation notice is if you're going for rent arrears in your claim, you have to provide a rent statement that goes back 2 years. Now, if your tenant's only been in the property for 6 months, then obviously you can only provide 6 months worth of rent statement. But the key is, if your tenant's been in there longer, then it has to be a full 2 years rent statement provided to the court. It will affect all new claims that have basically been put into court before the 3rd of August. Now, any claims that are submitted after the 3rd of August will be dealt with differently, but they won't require a reactivation notice. But when you submit your claim, you will still have to have all the information with regards to how COVID has affected your tenants. And again, if it's a rent arrears claim, then it will be a case of adding that 2 year rent statement. So that's the only update that I'm going to give you this evening. There has been a few other little bits of legislation, but not as important as this one. So what I'm going to do is hand over to Stuart now, if you want to just change your screen over, Stuart. So as you know, Stuart is going to be talking about co-living. He is an award-winning guest that we have this evening, so that's always really good to hear. And like I say, any questions at the end, please just ask away. We do have a smaller group tonight, but that's fine. So if I can just hand over to Stuart for this evening, and it's all over to you.
Can you hear me okay? Perfect. Let me just test that.
Yeah, I can hear you fine, Stuart.
Perfect. Has that all gone into full screen?
Yeah, it has now.
Perfect. Okay. Thanks for inviting me. So I'll just give you a very quick background around myself, and then what we're going to be doing this evening is talking around co-living and how that's different to HMOs and the opportunities there are in the market for you right now. And I'll explain through some of the stuff that we've been doing, and hopefully there'll be some learnings in there that you can apply into your projects. So quick bit of background about myself. I come from the creative industry. I spent most of my life in the creative sector, where I was in marketing, advertising agencies, product agencies, and eventually started my own company. So first one was a design agency called Byte Studio. I built that over about 7 years. And the second one was a product design company. And a lot of the principles that I'm going to share with you this evening are exactly the same principles we use there. So over the years of building those companies, these are just some of the clients that we designed products and experiences for. So again, the same methodologies we use for these clients are the same methodologies we use now to innovate new kind of co-living spaces and new experiences, which is why it's important to kind of understand what's happening in the market and how it's changing. So I've come from the tech design, innovation, marketing sector. I've pivoted full-time probably about 6 years ago into property, into the real estate, and taken all the learnings across and applied it to there. So this is the company that I created. It's called Co-Living Spaces. We started it about 6-7 years ago, and very much rather than building a traditional property company, we've set out to build an innovation company. So this is about the approaches and the methodologies that we use are applicable to all. So although tonight we're talking about co-living, we have in fact used the same processes and approaches to shared living. So short stays. So some of you might have serviced accommodation or holiday lets, and although I haven't got any of that to show you this evening, we have got a range of hotels in central Brighton where we've done the same principles. We've understood the customer, we've innovated, we've came up with new niches in the product market, and we've outperformed the market, and we've used the same principles. So although I'm going to share with you and show you all the photos, everything else this evening, it's applicable to other markets. It's about innovation is applicable across any market. It's just that now more than ever, it's more important not to be left behind. So some of the key things that we focus on: being creative, inventive, strategic, experimental, visionary, futurist, thinkers, disruptive, playful. These are the key reasons we got into property. It was to take the bits that we enjoyed from our previous industry and apply that into property. And I'm sure many of you probably look at property and you don't want to do the stuff that everyone else is doing. You want to try and do something individual. You want to do something that makes a difference. You want to do something that can impact people's lives. And that's very much what we focused on from the beginning. So you can see from the structure here, product innovation isn't just something we tag on. It's not just an outsourced thing. It's in the core of our business. And that is how we've been able to stay one step ahead and continually innovate since we've been full-time in the property market. And it's because of putting that right at the heart of the business that has allowed us to make the difference we have. So I wanted to share this because although I'm going to share with you some of the numbers, you can see that have allowed us to create a product that outperforms the market, to get the higher GDVs, the higher rents, the higher occupancy, everything else. We didn't do it by using innovation to just focus on performance. We focused on creating a product that improved people's lives and provided a great experience. We focused on that, and the performance was a side effect of doing that. And that's why it's so important when you're planning, what you're going to do in property, how are you going to, whether it's single lets, whether it's service accommodation, whether it's, shared living, whether it's, whatever variant of it there is, there's got to be a purpose behind what you're doing. And ultimately you're going to have products and you're going to have a customer. And, I think if you can get that balance right, not only can you improve people's lives, which means that you've got longevity there because people are recommending you to their friends and colleagues, but equally you're outperforming the market as well. That's like a true win-win. So that's how we've structured everything we do. We focus on creating the very best product and experience, which allows us to outperform the market on the financial side as well. But I'll go into that in more detail in a minute. So many years ago, when we first transitioned into the real estate market, my background was flipping properties. So, our background was very much adding value to increase the GDV and the valuation. So that was the underpinning, because, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you do, whether it's a conversion or a build. You're buying at one price, you're spending a certain amount, and you're looking to get a maximum GDV and the valuation, because the amount and the distance between your total cost and the GDV means that's how much you can recycle back out the deal. Otherwise, of course, if it's too close, well, most of your money's going to be left in the deal, which, is fine for some people, but you might be wanting to make your money go further, and you might want to recycle more so that you can do more projects, create more cash flow, and build the portfolio. So when we came to the HMO industry, which of course in this country, the HMO industry was an existing industry, and as this photo shows, it was it had a bad reputation, and even certainly in Brighton and Hove, which is where we're based, it had a shocking reputation, just because most of the landlords really didn't care. And there was a lot of landlords that bought stuff a long time ago. They didn't want to invest in it. New landlords to the market just crammed as many rooms in, didn't bother about amenities, saw tenants as a problem. And what happens? Just like the bedsit market wasn't known for its high-end products or quality. Actually, regardless of whether it's high-end or not, just quality. It created a bad reputation, which in turn now we're having to kind of like clean it up and try and show that there's a different way to do things, and that's not just out of landlords doing that. Is the customer wants change, and new landlords want change as well. So we've all got a part to play in changing the perception and the reputation of the shared living market. So we set out on a mission to try and drive change in the property market through our work to transform urban living through the use of design and innovation. And so that led on many years ago to co-living. When we started, this is probably early 2015, I think it was, where we were saying that co-living is going to be the next big thing. Back then, it was very experimental. The definition of co-living was very loose back then. And we were finding our way, we were experimenting, we were trying new things, we were trying things to help build the community, and a lot of the international things were just starting out. So co-living back in 2015-16 was in its very much experimental stage. And over the years, we've started to kind of evolve and try and pioneer new ways to evolve that, which I'll share with you. So what do? We do commercial and large buildings into co-living. So that means houses, existing houses, and commercial conversions into large, everything from medium to large co-living. And that's anything from 6 beds to about 35 beds schemes. So everything in that remit. And we've also got a chain of smart boutique hotels. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, we took the same principles. And then what we did is we created a chain of hotels, service accommodation, fully self-service, fully digitized, keyless entry, all that kind of stuff. And the experience, the product, the concierge. And then we created the multiple hotels on Brighton seafront. And that's our kind of diversification, I guess. That's the way I describe it now. And now what we're doing is, over the years, we have evolved into land acquisition. So now we acquire the land and we do mixed use schemes, we convert the buildings and we build from the ground up. So it's kind of an evolution of what starts as simple 4, 5, 6 bed shared living, evolves into sui generis, which is 7 or more, and then gradually into hotels and then into kind of more villages that have a bit of everything in them, or mixed use schemes. So we picked up a few awards along the way. This is Cyril's event that recommended me into Judy Ford. So 2018 Property Investor of the Year, 2018 HMO Deal of the Year, which I've got the photos to share with you on that one, and 2019 Property Developer of the Year. And these awards were very much for our drive for innovation in the sector, which is what we're going to be sharing with you in a minute. So you can start to see how we have, been able to make an impact. Because, I'm sure many of you will be wanting to see how you can evolve your portfolio, how you can outperform, get those numbers, to replace incomes, everything else. But you want to make an impact as well. This is about purpose beyond just the financial. So anyway, there's 3 key reasons why now has a huge opportunity for you in shared living. And this hasn't been the case for many years. But at the moment, the opportunities across 3 key areas. Firstly, it's about the innovators curve. So co-living was in its infancy. So back in 2015, 2016, we were innovating in the sector. It was relatively unknown. It was rather experimental. Now, it's matured enough that it's moved across into early adopters. Now, the reason that's important for you is because it allows you the opportunity to, if you're in the shared living market, especially the professional shared living market, the opportunity to be ahead of the curve. Now, if you're ahead of the curve, the reality is there's actually 2 options here, because if you've got professional shared living and the market's changing and you don't adapt, then you either fall behind or you go into a different sub-niche. But either way, once the market changes, which is, it started as a trickle, now it's changing at a more rapid pace. You have to kind of like either upskill into what the customer wants, or effectively get left behind. So there's a huge opportunity there to capitalize as one of the early adopters into the market. So firstly, it's about timing on the curve to be ahead of the market on a trend that is going quite rapidly up. Secondly, is the recession. We're already in a recession. I guess technically we're already in it. The next 12 to 24 months will provide, assuming you can stay liquid and you can get mortgages, it will provide a great opportunity for you to negotiate good prices and deals in areas that you may have struggled in before, but they are part of your long-term plan for ideal locations where you would want to have the structure of a co-living kind of portfolio or a mixed portfolio. So again, timing, assuming that you put the provision in place to be mortgageable and have the funds available, there's going to be a good opportunity over the next 24 months to negotiate on those sites. Thirdly, the government is relaxing permitted development, and they're modifying permitted development. They're modifying the planning rules because they want us and encourage us to go out there and build. And so we're going to see a lot of changes in the coming months. We've already seen some of them start to come out, but they're just early indicators of the fact that there's going to be change. And so if you're operating in conversions, or whether that's whether you're using planning, whether you're in Article 4, whether you're mixed use, whether you're in commercial, there is going to be many kind of new changes that are going to help us more quickly develop projects in a smoother manner than having to go through all of the same kind of planning kind of loopholes that we would have had to before. So again, another key opportunity why now is a huge timing for you. So some of the other key problems we cover. Firstly, talked about earlier on, the customer is changing. In fact, the customer's already changed. And when we talk about the customer, we originally think, many years ago, we were talking about millennials. Millennials was the big thing. Now it's all about Generation Z and some of the wider ones. The customer that you are selling to, you spend all this money, you're going to invest all this money, and then you kind of take a back seat, and then you fingers crossed someone's going to rent it. Now, I don't know about you, but I want to make sure that I am fully insured on the fact that not only do I have the best product on the market, that I'm outperforming the market as well, and I've got demand in there, and I'm getting high recommendations, and if possible, I've got a waiting list to going into the properties. That for me is an insurance policy. I don't want to fight it out at the bottom on price. I don't want to be the one left with sites because they don't rent. The reason we put so much effort into creating what we do is because we want to ensure that we have got not only the best product in the market, but the best customer experience. So where we've got customers who have rented properties with us, even if they move out, they're still a customer, and they might move into one of our one beds or one of our studios, or for example, they move away and then they come back. Remember, this isn't just about a tenant in a room. This is about customer life cycle. A bit like you going into your favorite shop, or the minute you register and you buy something from your favorite shop, your favorite brand, or wherever you go, you're a customer and you have a customer life cycle. And so we see it in that kind of same way. If you treat your customers really well and you create the best customer experience, they're not going to go to one of your competitors. They're going to go to you. And where are they going to recommend their friends? They're going to recommend their friends to you as well. And the minute you start to get over 20, 25% of your business is referrals, you're onto a winner at that point. So that's part of the key thing. So the customer's changing. You may have many years ago got away with not having to do very much, and chuck a few bits and pieces into a house, not bother, chuck it on the market, let it rent. Yeah, that's fine. You would have got away with that. But unfortunately, things have changed now. Maybe it was more fringe many years ago, but now, in certain areas, when you start to ripple in the lake, once the disruption drops in there, and co-living's been in now many years, it's rippled out. Newer investors into the market are thinking, they're more forward thinking, and they'll start to adapt. They'll create a better product, and if your product's not moving forward, you've got a dated product, so you may have issues on positioning of what your product is in the market. So again, it's got to be considered, because at the end of the day, it still comes back to the product and the marketing. And at the end, you're gonna want to try and create the efficiency and the optimization of making sure that you hit the numbers and the occupancy you need to make that deal stack. So co-living is basically an evolution of the professional HMO, the professional shared living. So it's not students, specifically the professional market. And although I've got friends of mine who rent to students, I'll be honest, it's not really a market I know. And I know there's some of them are struggling a little bit, and because a lot of the purpose-built blocks have gone up, and it's a bit more of a challenging market. But it's we have just from the start niched into professionals, simply because when I had my companies in central Brighton, my employees used to complain that they couldn't find any decent places to rent, and they used to say they were really low quality, they were hovels, they hated them, and that stayed with me. And so, of course, many years later, when I went into property, I thought, well, actually, it's obvious that I was going to do stuff that was high end, because endless feedback from my own employees was telling me that they couldn't find anywhere decent that they felt inspired by, that they wanted to invite their friends back to. And actually, what I found was people were willing to spend a bit more to get a better experience. So that's kind of what we tapped into over the years, and what we found with co-living is that definition of experience is kind of actually quite wider. So one thing that co-living is not is a HMO with a new badge. I think me and Julie spoke about this earlier on, and on one side you could, I'm sure there's many examples where you've seen some HMOs, people shout about co-living community, pictures come up, they're not doing the operations, and just looks like a HMO. And, you know, I'm sure there will be instances where people will have used it as a basic form of marketing. But, you know, you could put the Ferrari badge on this old car, but if you invite someone to come and drive that car, I think they're going to tell pretty quickly that it's not the Ferrari they were hoping to drive. So, you know, the customer is more savvy than they used to be. And, you know, they will shop around. And, you know, you've got to make sure that, you know, you've got the right kind of car that they want to buy. Otherwise, they will just vote with their feet and they'll carry on shopping. So there's 3 key areas that make up co-living. And I thought this diagram would kind of nicely help. Firstly, there's the space. This is the physical space. So this is, so if you're designing, you know, the product, then the physical space, the building, regardless of all the facilities and everything else, I'll show you that all in a minute, but the physical space is your product. That's the starting point. And one thing I would say at this point is, if you create a great product, it facilitates community, because obviously you create the environment facilitating for them to come together, but it is not the community. What you need for that is you have the community element, the community events and all the things you do to encourage people to come together, and then the experience. When I say experience, that's not just community experience, that's the whole brand experience that your customer has at every touch point, including onboard marketing, onboarding, inside, you know, living in there, the concierge part of it, the events, the after, all of it, experiences end to end. And both community and experience is operations. So when you hear people mention community, if they're not doing operations, as you can see from this, there's a huge part that's missing there. So for example, give you another example, you imagine you created a really great space, hand it to a letting agent. Letting agent does what many letting agents do, which is a shocking job. Can you imagine how much of you've done all that hard work? That letting agent is not on form. They've just actually created a bad experience in 2/3 of their entire journey. So co-living is about creating a great product, which I'll show you all the spaces, the breakdown of how you create a great product in a second. I'll show you photos, but it's as much about then building the community within it, but then the wider experience, the wider full brand experience. And all 3 of those elements make up co-living. And you've probably seen examples of variants of them where people are doing 1 or 2 or variants of them. But to get a co-living space that is highly oversubscribed, then really you're tapping into these 3 key elements. So if you do that correctly, you'll create the social lifestyle, which is exactly what the customer is looking for. They're looking for a social lifestyle that matches in with how they want to live in the city. So you've probably heard some other investors say, you know, their market in their area is too saturated, or I can't get a high enough valuation. I can't make the numbers stack. You know, the rental income's too low, or my rent's too low. I'm too affected on the rents. Or there's too much competition. Competitors are ahead of me. How do I keep up? Well, we've been oversubscribed since we launched. We've hit or exceeded GDVs. We have had some down valuations, like many people across the country have had, but in majority, we're hitting or exceeding our GDVs, our end valuations. We break rental ceilings in many locations, cities and towns. And we continue to raise the bar continually on every single project. So how have we done that? So why do we queue up the devices? Why do we queue up for, you know, why do we all order new ones of these? You know, we don't need a new one, but we all queue for it. I don't know about you, but you know, like this iPhone 11 Pro, I think it was, you know, it was a no-brainer. It's got the widescreen camera, it's got new software in there. Of course, you know, I'm not going to go to another brand. Why would I? I've got a brand, you know, I'm a brand advocate of Apple's. Why would I go anywhere else? I'm a customer for life until they really mess something up. But until then, the experience is perfect. So I wouldn't queue up like these people here on the photo. But reality is, people do. because they're advocates of the brand and the products they create. And that's because of innovation. Innovation is the difference between whether or not people are queuing up to use your product or whether they're not. And, when I say innovation, it's not some fringe thing. Some of the biggest customers and brands in the world use innovation and design to create a product and an experience that is light years ahead of their competition. In fact, it's their strategic advantage they have. It's the edge in the market that they have. So the question, obviously, from this is like, do you want to have the edge? Do you want to be ahead of everyone else? Do you want to take the market advantage of the opportunity? So one of the key things to think about is we need to rethink how we design. So with shared living, there is a tendency to think of primarily interior design, because you naturally think, I see the photos online, there's interior design, surely that's it, I'll just get an interior designer and job done. And, don't get me wrong, that will allow you to kind of create a better product that will help you. But we're more interested in the ingredients. So in this analogy of the cupcake, what ingredients have we got? Let's try some new ingredients. Let's mix them in new ways. Let's try and bake that cake in alternative ways. Let's repackage it. Let's remarket it. Let's just retry new inventive ways to kind of like mold it and adapt it. That is innovation. Innovation is across all of that. And one of the reasons that I always have this slide in is because interior design per se, yeah, you need to maybe come from a design background to maybe do it at the level, to really kind of like, well, actually anyone can do it. But if you want to do it at a certain level, you'd have to, some design background would help. But the thing about innovation is you do not need to come from a design background to innovate. That's creativity. And what I find is usually the case is people lack creative confidence. Everybody can be creative. I've run hundreds and hundreds of workshops with people where they pitch in ideas, they brainstorm, and before you know it, everyone's got concepts in there. Everyone can think of new ideas. And I think in the context of property and real estate, we've got to be able to move things forward. And so when I'm showing a lot of the stuff, I'm showing you the photos, I guess what I'm trying to get across is that don't let any limiting beliefs make you think that you can't innovate, because everybody can innovate at every level of a business. We're not just talking about design innovation. There's product innovation, there's process innovation, systems, stuff you do behind the scenes to create a great customer experience, the software you put in business, the use of technology. It's across everything, and you do not need to be super creative to do that. That's just about having the confidence to try new things. So hopefully, that will kind of like inspire you that you can, it's worth going out there and, because, the effort that you put in instantly puts you ahead of the competition who aren't putting that effort in. So understanding your customers is a really important part of the process. Years ago, there would, if I spoke to landlords, I would say, have you ever run any customer research? Have you spoken to your customer? They'd probably look at me blankly and go, why on earth would I want to do that? Whereas, of course, these days, I want to, your target customer are the people who are going to pay you money. So, if I had a notepad on here and I said, oh, all right, guys, tell you what, I've got a notepad on here, yeah, and I've got the top 10 things that all the customers in your location value as being the most important things to them, yeah. And if you knew what this list was and you provided it, you'd have the edge over all your competitors. Would you want me to turn that around and show you? Well, of course you would, because that's the gold dust. Most people don't gather that information. But the reality is, all you need to do is ask. And even if you haven't started your first project, we used to do these little guerrilla research sessions where we would go in competitors, no, I think it was lettings, we would go to do viewings. We'd meet the tenants, and then we'd prep like 5, 6, the agent would be somewhere else. We'd prep 5, 6 questions and quickly fire them off to the tenants in there. And then we do that house by house, and we'd gather a load of data. And then once we had our own houses, then of course we just had in focus groups with our own tenants, and then we just pay them in booze. You pay them in wine and beer. They love, it's amazing. They'll give you loads of feedback for wine and beer, as you can imagine. So this feedback is easy to get, and it's relatively straightforward to do. So again, importance of understanding what your customer wants and what they're interested in, what motivates them. It's really important. Quick quote for you here. If I'd asked the public what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So Henry Ford said that before he invented the motor car. Now, the reason this is so important is because your customers will not innovate for you. They won't tell you what they want because they don't know what they want yet, but they will validate it for you. So if you said, for example, which of these facilities was most useful, what area, you looking to, what are the most deciding factors when you're buying, and what storage facilities are the most useful in a room, and you can gather certain information from them, but it's qualify. They will qualify your ideas and your innovation for you, but they won't innovate for you. So the spaces that we create, firstly, they're designed for sharing. You're not recreating the family home. They're not a family. They don't, in many cases, they don't know each other. You have to create and optimize a space specifically for people who don't know each other and the way they're going to use and live in that space. So the facilities that we create are very much different from the dated HMOs of many years ago. Super fast mesh Wi-Fi. I certainly didn't have super fast mesh Wi-Fi when I lived in HMOs when I grew up in Brighton. Now, of course, we have probably Virgin. We probably have 350 megabits coming into the building, into a router, and then we have access points across the building, usually at least 4 or 5 access points, pushing out 100% signal everywhere in the building. That for us that's a minimum, because it ensures that you're paying to bring in. You've all got internet at home. You know what it's like when you go down in one corner of the building and you're like, oh, for God's sake, I'm paying for 100 megabits, and now I can't even download a whatever. You imagine, when you've got customers, you can't have those Wi-Fi black spots. You need to get signal everywhere, 100%. There's very simple ways to do that. So we do super fast fiber mesh Wi-Fi to bounce it everywhere. We do mainly en suites, but we have off suites as well. We invest in the best mattresses we can buy. We've got laundry rooms, cleaners, cinema rooms, co-working, community managers, and technology that can allow people to report issues or find out about events or connect with other housemates. So all of that was not, that wasn't the service I had. I don't know how long it was actually, probably 15 odd years ago, when I lived in HMOs with my mates in central Brighton and Hove. We were, I think there was like six of us in one shower room. This one shower between 6 people. We certainly didn't have en suites, and we certainly didn't have fast Wi-Fi, and we certainly didn't have luxury memory foam mattresses. That was for sure. So the market's changed, and the customer expectation has changed. So another area we focus on is community. You've heard this probably mentioned several times within the HMO circles, everything else. So that, with regard to the spaces we create, we focus on mainly investing in social spaces. This is something we did right from the start. 2015, we said, look, social spaces are really important. We're going to invest a large proportion of our time into creating these spaces where people can eat and dine together. They're highly designed. They're optimized specifically for the use of creating a community in there, bringing people together. And I remember when we first created a lot of these spaces in 2015, and we got absolutely pulled apart on social media by lots of existing landlords and everything else who said, no one will live in them, too trendy, just look like coffee shops, they'll never work, blah, blah, blah. And of course, we've been oversubscribed since we started, it would, and then, go fast forward several years, they're starting to imitate it. So, whatever you do, don't listen to other landlords too much if you're going to social media, because, take a lot of stuff with a pinch of salt, because at the end of the day, there's really just you and your customer. And of course, you should have people that mentors and people that advise you and help you, of course. But very much it's your customer. The best data you can ever get is from your customer. If I listened to the other landlords when back in 2015, we wouldn't have done half the stuff that was successful that we've done now. But I didn't listen to them. I listened to the customer and I adapted based on their feedback. So you kind of get a sense of the product we created. So we create a very, very kind of high-end product. We've spent a lot of our time investing in the main kind of social areas, from cafe kitchens and dining spaces through to kind of like wider kind of lounge style kind of kitchen environments. And we've kind of taken a lot of our lean from creating more of a commercial fit out in these environments. So they're very distinctive. We've created a bit of a brand style. So, it's a bit, we deliberately tried to give our brand and our style an edge because it's distinctive. It stands out. Some people say, oh, it looks really expensive. Do you spend a lot of money doing that? So we've refined the techniques that we've used over the years and brought the costs down. So, and when I show you the numbers in a little while, you can see how it affects on the numbers. This particular property here, this was a property, Central Hove, put it on the market. Within 1 hour, we had just shy of 50 applications. 50 applications within 1 hour to live in there. This was one of the projects that was the HMO Deal of the Year, which was a mixed-use scheme in central Eastbourne. I think it was this one. And we've got across buildings, whether they're the larger developments, we have smaller kind of social spaces, the kitchen, the big cafe kitchens, and then we have the breakout spaces and everything else. So we've tried to evolve. So although everything I'm showing you is different, and there are some radical kind of differences between them, they all feel related. And that's because we have a product and we've evolved the product, and we've deliberately been very experimental in moving that product forward, so that every project we've done, we've continued to raise the bar. We've tried new things, such as this one here, where we've taken the same learnings, worked out what's successful, which areas get used the most, and we've fed that into new projects. So as we work on the new projects and, evolve that, we can work out, which facilities, which styles, which bits get used and get that feedback. So that's the main kind of social spaces, like cafe kitchens and dining spaces. One of the things that we found probably about 3 years ago was many of our customers were working from home 1 or 2 days a week. Now, bear in mind, that's very, that was pre-coronavirus. That was, we were just seeing this as a trend 3 years ago. So we decided to, rather than cram a load more rooms in, which would be the obvious thing to do, because we thought, well, we could do that, but then we'll have to go through planning and all the other stuff. So we thought, rather than do that, because the numbers stacked anyway, so we decided to create a whole load of co-working within co-living. And by doing that, we suddenly found that we had all lots of freelancers, self-employed people, and people who were working 1 or 2 days a week from home, and they gravitated to rent this first because they want to spend the whole day working out their bedroom. Doesn't matter how great desk you put in their room, it's still you wouldn't want to get up in the morning and basically do your whole day's work in your bedroom and then go sleep in your bedroom. It's a bit too much. So having these dedicated kind of co-working spaces has allowed us to kind of we were ahead of the market, because of course now with coronavirus, this is coming. Suddenly we've got stock across our area with co-working in it, which means, and none of our competitors have got anything like that in the market, which means, that these houses are highly oversubscribed for what they are. And even if our competitors start to adapt to catch up, we're years ahead of them, and we're constantly changing on every single project. So this is about being ahead, having the edge in the market. So we've built co-working spaces, and these spaces, one thing I would just say about them is, although they're co-working spaces, they are adaptive. So during breakfast, lunch and dinner, these spaces can be used as additional uses. And then in the main parts of the day, the daytime, they can be used for working, which is the key area that that they're it's one of the reasons people will decide to live there, because again, it's about facilities. There's extra facilities there. Sometimes the co-working's big, and sometimes we do micro co-working. So just like this, only 2 people can fit in here. It's a little breakout co-working area, proves very popular right next to a roof terrace. So, you know, that is, you know, it's about having these spaces built into the environment. The other thing that we kind of started probably about 4 years ago is there's such a focus in co-living on social spaces that one of the key themes we wanted to kind of like promote as part of the work we were doing was getting the balance between privacy and social. Because as much as you're building community and social, you know, there's times where you just don't feel social. You know, it's probably the case that 90% of the time you feel very social, but 10% of the time, do you know what? You just need a bit of space. You don't really want to just go to your bedroom. You could go to your bedroom, but you spend a lot of time in there. So we create breakout spaces. And these are specifically designed so that 1 or 2 people from a group can break off and they can use the space. It can either be seclusion, it could be relaxation, it could be catching up, it could be a meeting, it could be talking, it could be your friend over. These breakout spaces give you the option to spend some time away from the main group in co-living. And it was one of the things that we've been championing for many years and have really kind of come into their own, especially over the coronavirus period, because we now have people are no longer just crammed into their rooms. We do have a range of social spaces that people can use. Then you've got the private space, which of course your bedrooms. And we've tried to listen to feedback about what people want from rooms. And we've created a range of kind of like 3 gradings of room, like premium, large, medium and small. And we've aired on the side of lots of storage in there and well-designed spaces, well-lit spaces, lots of mood lighting, everything else. And so, you know, these are just some of the premium larger rooms, which tend to be 13 to 20 square meters in size. Some of them will have like oversized glazing and dormers and everything else built in there. Plenty of storage. In fact, whatever storage you're thinking of putting in shared living, chances are they'll need double. Because I don't know about you, but if you've looked at these kind of off-the-shelf HMO stacks, I don't know if any of you have ever tried fitting your entire contents into 1 wardrobe, 1 chest of drawers and 1 bedside table. I don't know about you, but I couldn't fit very much of my stuff in those 3 things. So we start from the principle that that's clearly nowhere near enough. And so what we do is we make sure that there is we have multiple chest of drawers, we have wardrobes with chest of drawers, we have storage, we have bookcases, we have shelves. We really kind of, you know, we ramp that up just simply because, you know, if you do enough visits on the properties, you'll gradually get to see how people live and how much stuff they bring with them, which can be quite shocking sometimes. Hence, the storage is clearly not enough. This is kind of mid-range rooms. Some of them, as you can see here, which have got their own private en-suites. We have most of our stuff is en-suite, but we have a lot of stuff where it's off-suite. So I don't think people mind. Private bathroom's a private bathroom. If it's accessed off from the hallway, or whether it's accessed in your room, at the end of the day, the real important thing is private, and it's yours, and you're not sharing it. We do have some shared bathrooms, but and in certain locations, that's fine. And really, the choice of whether or not you have an ensuite or not really comes down to budget and the deal and how it stacks. Another key area that we spend time on as part of creating the community, the co-living, everything else, is the outdoor spaces. And so often, you can imagine the classic, traditional landlord, go to B&Q, table and chairs, chuck it in the garden, job done. But there's a huge opportunity for you to extend the experience that is inside the house to outside the house. And surprisingly, when we are designing and optimizing these spaces to create them, we put in the same effort into the exterior as we do the inside spaces, because proportion of scale, like volume scale, what we've got out there is some of the biggest volume of effective social space. So we try and optimize every centimetre of it and lay it out and provide the correct layout, and we really consider how to lay it out space. Because if I'm outside in a, this location, I need to know, right, okay, bike storage is an important one. How do I access the bike storage so I can get enough for everyone? Barbecue zones. So, for example, people remember, this is about bringing people together. So if you want to create dining so that everybody can sit together. You want relaxation seating so that you can chill out. Ideally well positioned where the sun is going to come down in as well. And then you need space for your barbecue and everything else so that they can have events, bring their friends around, or we can put on pop-up events, send a chef round and put on a barbecue evening for them. So the outside spaces are hugely important. Then we focus on experience. And this is where we're kind of like building kind of like the operations part that we described earlier on. We have our own kind of lettings operations side, and we have community managers, and community managers provide, I guess it's very much based on what we've done with the hotels. The hotels have a concierge, and when you check into the hotels, people, one of our team will phone you up, check you're okay, check, tell you about the city, maybe give you some recommendations, check everything's okay. If there's any problems, this is the number. It's like a concierge service. Our community managers work in exactly the same way. We've done exactly the same setup. The community managers can organise anything to do with the community, and also can organise new ways to bring people together, which may lead on to things that we do in the houses or outside of the houses, or the events and the various things that we put on, or the surprises, because we do little surprises for them. And the houses win things, and some people get takeaways and random things, but we can organize little things that help bring the community together. And then, of course, we have the interconnected communities. So earlier on, I mentioned about customer life cycle. We have many customers that have been with us for many, many years, and they may have lived in several properties across the South Coast with us because they stayed as a customer. And rather than going off and going to the market, they call us and say, I'm thinking of moving from here to here. Have you got anything? And then we put them on a priority list, and we help them. They speak to the community manager, and the community manager just seamlessly make that, organize that all for them, because that's part of the service. So, quick quote for you here. There's only one boss, the customer, and he or she can fire everybody in the company from the chairman down simply by spending his or her money somewhere else. And that is why understanding your customer, tapping into your customer needs, and providing exactly what your customer wants is so hugely important. Because the reality is, when the market changes, then of course you have to adapt or not adapt, as the case may be. So I thought some of you would probably want to see some numbers. So I thought I would show you 3 projects. I'll just 3 kind of standard mid-size, small to mid-size projects. This was a sui generis project. Sui generis basically means if you're doing shared living and it's more than 7 rooms, it goes under the classification of sui generis. Up till then is maybe PD, or if you're not in Article 4. So this was just a shop with upper floors, mixed use, and then what we've done is we put in a planning application to turn the whole building into residential. Upper floors were already residential. Ground floor we used prior approval to convert to residential, and then what we did is we then blended the whole thing with a second planning application to do one big one. The reason we did that was because we cut down on the infrastructure, the number of gas feeds, electrical feeds, and it was more efficient use of the space and efficient use of energy and a better cash flow. So win-win-win on all 3 of those. But we did a full planning application, although we knew we could do the fallback was 2 resis, flats and resi above. So we kind of knew that our fallback plan was full residential anyway. We just got more density in the scheme by doing a secondary gap. So we purchased it for 215. We refurbished it for 150,000. GDV 650. We recycled 101% of our funds. Gross rental 57. Gross profit after all costs. Our net profit is 20,000 a year. and it's infinite ROI, all money out. So, you probably don't need many of those to, replace your money. So that's all of your money back out of the deal, and you're getting 20,000 a year off that. So hopefully that sounds good. Another project here was another mixed use one, which was actually probably very close down the road to the other one, actually. This was a commercial with upper floors. The upper floors became a 5-bed co-living. The rear was a 2-bed flat, which is rented by the room, not just rented as the flat. And then a retail office at the front, which the council were adamant that they wanted to retain some frontage to the high street. Purchased it at 190. We spent more than the purchase price on it because it was pretty shocking. In fact, those of you that do commercial conversions, you need some decent contingency on these projects, more so than your standard shared living projects. GDV 650. We recycled 125% of our funds, which basically means that we got all of our money back out again, plus about 70 or 80,000 on top. Gross rental 58, profit after all costs 20,000, ROI infinite because all of our money's out, plus we've got the extra cash out on it. So again, all money out, decent return, 20,000 net. And then I thought we'll show you another smaller one. It's got 2 mid-sized ones. Another smaller one I'll show you. It's a 2-bed house converted to 6-bed. Now, I know it sounds like quite a big difference, 2 to 6, but it probably was more like a 3-bed, but badly laid out. So it's really a 3 to a 6. It's just that it was technically a 2. We created multiple rooms in the loft. We did an L-shaped dormer, reconfigured throughout. Even though we do the larger projects and the bigger schemes and the builds, the build to rent stuff now, I still like these projects because if it permitted development, you can have a number of these kind of within your pipeline, and there's no surprises, there's no planning, it's just nice and easy, and I can always sell these back off to families in the future. They're in great locations, and so I will always, as well, even though I'm doing a lot of bigger ones now, which are larger multi-million-pound GDV projects, I still like these ones. If they stack, they stack. So purchased at 372, refurbishment 110, GDV 600, cash recycled 75%, gross rental 51,000, net profit 24,000. So that's basically 2,000 net per month. 37% ROI, right in the heart of Brighton and Hove. So again, how many of those do you need? So if you're basically netting 20 to 25,000, and these are just on mid-size. These aren't even the bigger projects that we do. These are just kind of like the small to mid projects. We have managed to create products that are highly efficient, high yielding, so we can use our techniques of innovation to create high performing, high yielding assets that are in high demand, which is kind of like the sweet spot of what you want. But you do it by focusing on the customer, and in return, you can create the great numbers as well. So, quick quote for you here: innovation needs to be part of your culture. Customers are transforming faster than we are, and if we don't catch up, we're in trouble. So at the end of the day, you have a choice. You can either be a BlackBerry or you can be an Apple. We all know what happened to BlackBerry. They didn't innovate, they didn't keep up, they fell behind, and eventually the writing was on the wall. Do you want to be a Blockbuster or do you want to be a Netflix? Interestingly, the owner of Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy the shares in Netflix when it was in startup mode, and he didn't buy them. And then they put him out of business. So again, do you adapt or not adapt? Depends which market you're in. If you're in the shared living market, the professional market, it's all about positioning. Where are you in the market? You're either at the top end, you're either in the you're in charity sector, in charity shared living, you're in social housing shared living, or you're in professional. If you're in professional, you need to be aware of the changes that are happening, because if you're not investing in your product, even at the simplistic level, and you're just taking the small learnings from some of the stuff I've shared, and you don't have to create the full refurbishments that we do. But if you come away from this and you think, do you know what, actually, I just want to make sure I'm going to do a bit of market research. What's on the market? Right, okay, what do we need to do to be either on par or better than the stuff on the market, to ensure that when people do come looking for it, they're going to rent our rooms first, or they're going to rent our rooms early before the competition. Because and actually, in many cases, you might outperform and get higher numbers than you originally anticipated on your deal sheets. So those are the key things which are a net effect of creating a great customer product, experience, and community. So everything that I've shared this evening, and all of the stuff from my background in innovation, I've taken all of that content and all of the learnings, and I've put all of that together into a set of methodologies which I have put into a book. And the book is now with the authors going through, probably changing a lot of my bad grammar, and probably going through and putting some bits apart in language of the structuring, as they probably do, which is going to be coming out probably early winter now, because they spend a few months on it at this point. And I've taken all my learnings across product, innovation, community, how you can outperform the market, get the highest rents, get the highest GDVs, get the highest occupancies, all as a result by using simple techniques and methodologies that anyone can do, regardless of their creative or design background. And I've applied that all into there. Now, I appreciate, obviously, that's not coming out for a few months, so you may want to kind of have some information. So what I've done is I've created a gift for you. So these are the 7 biggest co-living and HMO secrets from the book as nuggets. These are nuggets within the book, and I've recorded 7 videos. I've basically created a video for you for the 7 key nuggets, so that you can help create your own co-living spaces, or certainly look to implement learnings from that into your projects. So there's no cost to it, it's free of charge. I've created 7 videos for you. If you just go to www.co-livingspaces.co.uk/gift, sign up there, and you'll be sent an email, and the email will basically automatically over 7 days send you all the videos. And so that is my gift to all you guys for obviously spending the evening listening to this talk, and hopefully it's inspired you to think differently about what's possible, both financially and market positioning wise, and from a customer perspective as well. And why it's so important to ensure that if you're the developer 2.0, landlord 2.0 is upskilled into product, innovation, marketing, brand, because ultimately at the end of the day, we're selling products and we have customers, and this is a business. Property is a business, and we need to upskill ourselves and make sure that we're always optimizing what we do, maximizing what we do, and we're highly efficient and highly oversubscribed in the kind of products that we create. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much, Julie, for asking me to speak. Do we want to see if we want to go to any questions or freestyle some?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you able to unshare your screen? Because obviously all I can see is your screen now.
Let me unshare that. Escape. Stop share. Right.
Fabulous. Brilliant. So has anybody got any questions? I mean, for me, that was absolutely fascinating. And obviously what we were talking about before we started is just the difference between what co-living actually means and what us in layman terms think it means. And I mean, just seeing the layout of those properties, my first question is, how on earth do you guarantee that those tenants won't wreck everything or take it with them when they leave?
Well, well, I mean, a lot of stuff's very durable. So, a lot of stuff's made out of steel or reclaimed timber and brick and various other things. They would really struggle to, I mean, to be fair, your IKEA chipboard is going to break a hell of a lot quicker than a steel framed table. So most of the stuff's quite durable. So, I think durability is a key thing. I think Julia Maurice talks about durability. It's key important thing. There are certain things that you remember that break. So most of the stuff we do is very, very highly durable. Also, on the customer demographic, I mean, what I didn't tap into was my property managers before. So when we rent a property, we have a previewing questionnaire, and the previewing questionnaire has, I don't know, 15 questions on it. What's your name, age, company you work for, role, and then it will have things about, renting history, CCJs, rent arrears, blah, blah, blah. And so we have a filter right at the start. And then from that filter, we have the viewings. My property manager has full discretion at who she accepts or doesn't accept through those viewings, with a view to because obviously you have a certain amount of information, then you find out there's got the personality, everything else, and we try and make sure that we fill the house with people that are similar values and similar. You can tell. You could imagine you get a house of people that don't know each other, and then you go and put a party head in there. That's not gonna very quickly. That's all gonna fall apart. We have. I remember we had one house where, I think it was in Central Hove, and there was one girl that was in there, and she was, perfectly, she was a nice enough girl when she moved in, and within about 3-4 months, she was putting on these kind of like Ann Summer sex parties. And then the neighbours called because she'd hired a stripper to come around in the garden. Can you imagine, of all places, they'd had a stripper come around in the garden, and then of course, so very quickly she moved out. But you've got to be able to identify when someone is a mix, because most people that rent from us, they just want they always say the same things, like, I don't want a party house, because everyone wants the same thing. I want shared living. I want these facilities. I want the amazing garden. I want the I want the co-working. I want the roof terrace. I want all these things. But I don't mind being in a community. And in fact, it's great for social circle and loneliness and everything else. And I get to meet friends and we socialise. That's all brilliant. But sometimes they worry about the privacy element as well. And so I think and they don't want a party house, so they want everything to be like, I want to know I'm with people like me that are chilled and relaxed and they're not crazy, and they're so I think having those two filters and the ability to say no is a good thing. And we are very much renting to professionals. They've got decent jobs. We and also the other thing is the credit check. The actual referencing we do, which is we do it through our platform, our system we use does it within it. It's quite stringent. It's quite a stringent, check and a credit check. I mean, the credit check on its own is quite stringent, let alone the actual other checks they do. So there's kind of like 3 layers they've got to go through. So, in most cases, we're pretty good. I mean, we have had a few incidents along the way of people that have, you've got the classic thing where someone moves in and they just turn out to be an untidy person. And then you've got that awkward thing where, one untidy person doesn't clean up after themselves, and then everyone else does, and then everyone else, can fall out. So, this whole thing about, when you're bringing people in and you're creating community, there is always going to be the small little things you have to deal with, and that, community manager has to deal with those. But yeah, it's about bringing the right kind of people together. And I think coming back to what we said earlier on, which is about, if you just give it to a letting agent to do it, you really want to make sure you got the right one. I mean, this is why we do our own operations, because, most of my experiences of letting agents, I haven't had any particularly good experiences with them. And hence that, the best way for us to ensure we create the best experience is to do it ourselves. And the irony being that actually it's more cost efficient for us to do it ourselves. The actual amount that we were paying a letting agent in the first number of properties when we started paid for the staff to bring in. And so either way, it's still more cost effective for me to have my own team. And the difference is we can put on events and we can do all these spin out things which build the community, which of course no letting agent is going to be able to do that, because logistically it can't be done. But we can do that because we effectively have a small, which call it like a little small team that we've created that is in-house.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Has anybody else got any questions for Stuart?
Yeah, good evening, Stuart. Thank you for an excellent presentation, and your passion's really coming through there, something that you clearly believe in.
Thanks, Chris.
Your idea of the sort of customer life cycle, have you thought where else there's the potential for developing that at different life stages?
Yeah. What you mean as in? What you mean as in?
You're focusing at a professional. Sorry. So you're looking at single professionals at their sort of mid-range life, but finding accommodation for single people, perhaps those older in the range, that where they're not looking for so much an office space, but they are looking still for a community base.
Yeah, we so interestingly, we're across about 4 locations, and the stuff that we've got in central Brighton and Hove, we have people apply to live there that are in, I would say, so you obviously you would expect that in shared living you'd normally be 25, 35. It's kind of your obvious kind of like your millennials into the next bracket. But we have a lot of applications from 35 to 50. We don't have as many of those in, say, Eastbourne Worthing Way, but certainly within Brighton and Hove, we've definitely got a big spike in people that are in the kind of like that, kind of like a slightly more mature market, if you like, and they don't mind sharing. And in fact, the social element, as you identified, is really important. They don't mind living with younger people. In fact, we sometimes kind of mix people in different age groups, and we've had some good feedback to that. But they don't. As you can imagine, the first thing they say, we don't mind living with younger people, but we do not want a party house. As in, like, if they're, we've got one guy who lives in a house. I think he's 50, and then we've got other people in there that's like 30, 35, and 50, and they have house nights together. They eat together. I was originally many years ago concerned about a bigger age group in some houses, but we've had positive feedback to it. So, I was only going to try and restrict that if I thought it was a problem, but it hasn't been a problem, and people have actually quite liked tapping into the experience and the knowledge of people at different age groups. Well, the other thing that we do, which is probably worth mentioning, is depending on our projects, we don't. It's not always single people, so we do have a number of projects where, just because the number of rooms in the units or the planning, we can sometimes have some rooms that are allocated to have couples in. So if they're particularly big, and just because of the planning class or however we structured it, we can get couples in there. I think that sometimes there's such a focus on like, for example, single people in shared living, yeah. But the reality is, what that ends up creating is a real problem for couples that can't afford a 1-bed. Because imagine if a couple cannot afford a 1-bed, but they want to live somewhere, they want to live somewhere great, they want to have social interaction, everything else, and they keep going and they keep applying for the shared living houses, only to be turned away each time because sorry, no couples. And most shared living is no couples, and you do have anomalies. We have several buildings where, just because of the way they were set up, we were able to get a few units with couples in, and they're always busy. So when you talk about that, the opportunity, I think there's opportunity for couples. I think there's opportunity for later stages of life. I think when you're dealing with 35 to kind of like 50 territory, I think there's a real. We're already seeing the demand anyway. We were going to create spaces that were specifically going to be right. Okay, 25 to 35 is not in this building. This whole house is 35 to 50, and that anyone who comes in applying is in that territory. But what we found is we brought people in older age groups, but we just put them within properties and said, look, if there's a problem, we call the community manager, you can move into another house, it's not a problem. But we've never had a problem. So we thought we were going to have to almost separate, but that's not what we found. And also just tying into what you said about the through life, the different stages of life opportunity. One of the projects that I'm working on now, which is we just agreed, is a big site which is going to be I think it's going to be like a 32 bed shared living. Is going to be a gym, like a proper gym, the size of like proper like the gym group style, big old building, like 4,000 square foot gym, a creche, and probably about 15-20 flats, a mixture of 1 and 2 beds. So in that whole kind of little mini village, if you like, we've got shared living, and we've got self-contained, and we've got community assets and outdoor spaces and gym and creches and everything else, depending on where you are in your life cycle, everything else. So there is an opportunity when you kind of think wider in it, but regardless of whether you're in the blocks of flats or whether you're in the shared living, you've all got access to the community facilities and the gyms and the other stuff anyway. So I think when you're thinking customer, actually, regardless of whether it's the flats or the shared living, the co-living, the community, you can almost take the community out of co-living. Mm-hmm. Co-living, the community isn't exclusive to co-living. I know it's the main subject everyone hears about, but you could take co-living take the community out of co-living and just say within that whole mixed village of everything, the 1 beds and the studios and the shared living, there is one bigger community that accesses all of the facilities. And so there's a big opportunity, I think, across the wider use of what people want at different stages of their lives. Oh, you've muted, Julie. You're muted.
That's because I live by a dual carriageway, and at this time of night it turns into Brands Hatch for some reason.
Oh, right.
I'm just going to go through some of the questions that have come up on the chat. Sudeep said, how do you find your tenants? Obviously, you've sort of said about fitting in the criteria. Do you have minimum tenancy terms? Because obviously I heard you mention there that you move them around within the different properties. Yep. And your monthly rents, are they higher than the average that an HMO would be in the area?
So you said, how do I find them? Yeah.
How do you find your tenants, and what sort of criteria do they need to fit?
Yeah.
Do they have a minimum tenancy term? So how do you move them between the properties?
Yeah.
And then the rents, are they higher than what you'd expect in an average HMO?
Okay, cool.
And that's all from Sudeep.
Yeah. Okay. So, Sudeep. So how do we find them? We use a mixture of spare room and Facebook groups. Facebook groups is just a new one that's kind of evolved more recently. I didn't use it a lot, and we didn't need to use it a lot, but we have started to use it more. But the primarily spare room we use for finding them. But what we've tended to do is we have a database. So every time we release a property, we end up doing a whole lot of marketing on our database, and then what we do is we pre-sell most of the rooms. But if it's a smaller one, we might be fully sold out. And then what we do is we still spend on spare room, I don't know, it's like 40 quid or whatever. We still spend the 40 quid. And what we do is all the people that get in contact saying, I want a view. So I'm really sorry, that one's just gone. But if you want to go onto this priority viewing list, as soon as the next one comes up, another room comes up, very similar to that, we'll let you know. And then what we've done is we've built this database of people that just love the product and the brand. And so what we do is when we first finish a project, we contact the database, because remember, customer life cycle, going back to, we talked about customer life cycle with Chris, even if they're not ready right now, okay, they go back to living where they are. But when their tenancy comes to end, there's a new opportunity for them to maybe move back in when another project's finished. So we contact everyone in the database, and then we try and fill it that way. And there might only be a few rooms left. And then when we release it to market, again, we usually oversubscribe because we haven't got much left because we went to the database. And then we just leave it live, and we just bring all that interest into the database. So how do we find them? Mainly 90% through spare room and 10% through social media. And actually, I would say, I don't know the current data, but the data when we were measuring it prior to lockdown and coronavirus, we were running at about 20% of our business coming from referral. So this is where tenants say, oh, one of my mates wants to move in. Instantly, they bypass they don't bypass the checks and the credit checks, but they bypass all the lists because, someone's recommended them. And so we fast track them in and they get first opportunity. So I think we were about 20% referrals, which is exactly what you want to do. You want people to refer you. So that's how we find them. The criteria, the criteria is very much the spreadsheet that we first have. The policy is, if anybody, because we've deviated from this a few times and we've come back to it, and my policy with my staff now is, I know you want to rent the room really quickly, and I want you to rent the room really quickly if there's one available, but the process is the process. If someone wants to view that room, here's the previewing questionnaire, fill it in, and I can get you organised into a room viewing. We don't ever skip that stage, because you can spot some clangers right at that stage. So we use that to spot whether there's any problems. It's just a first port of call, and then only after that we then send them the criteria. We get a general sense of who's coming through at that point. Then there's a virtual viewing, for obvious reasons in the current climate, and if they are serious from the virtual viewing, then we do the physical viewing. Interestingly, this whole thing about the virtual viewings is actually quite useful when it's come out of COVID, because what we've done is we've minimized the time wasters, because you had a lot of people that would turn either agree a viewing and then not turn up. We don't really get that now, because it's like, look, if you've seen the viewing, you've seen the numbers, you've seen everything else, you've seen the viewing, you've seen the virtual walk around or the VR tour or whatever it is, you've seen that, you like it, I'm very interested, and I want to come in. So you've actually removed a load of time wasters, and it means that I haven't sent a member of staff out to go and travel in the car, to wait there for them and everything else. So yeah, what we do is, there's a first part of criteria, which is about that spreadsheet spotting anything. And then I pretty much leave the criteria up to my community managers to meet people and get a sense of whether they feel they would be the right fit for the house. And so that criteria is firstly it's a people criteria. I mean, the top 15 questions when they first come in will spot some, you got someone with CCJs, rent arrears, and those other stuff that you're probably not going to rent to them anyway. So, you can spot some of that stuff early on, and then you kind of got the criteria of what kind of person are they, because you can tell that straight away. I leave that to the judgment of my community manager, because she's usually doing with multiple people who want the room. So, I can leave that with them. And then, of course, your final criteria, which is happening, is a very stringent due diligence on the referencing and credit checking. So all three of those, we've learned along the way not to. I know that when it all happens, you want it to happen quicker. You want to get someone in there, you want it quicker, but it's just not worth rushing that. It takes a certain number of days. It is that is the process. We have had a few occasions where we've skipped the spreadsheet at the start, and we have had a few people slip through the net. So we just don't skip that anymore. That's the process. The criteria is very very strict. Minimum terms. Well, everything's still done on the standard tenancy documents. So most people who come in want a minimum of the 6 months ASTs. We do have some people that come in on the 12 months ASTs, but contrary to what the government says about massive 5-year ASTs, all of the evidence we see from everyone living in shared living is that the very notion of shared living is that they want freedom and they want the community, they want everything else, but they're probably at a stage of their life where they're changing job every few years, and they might go where their career takes them. and signing a 5-year AST contract because Jeremy Corbyn has decided that everyone wants the security of a 5-year contract that's not what we're seeing. Maybe he's spoken to families that are in single lets that want that security, 100%. But when it comes to urban city centre living in shared professional living, they want flexibility. So minimum term 6 months. And then the rents, I'd say that the rents we achieve are probably about 20%, 15 to 20% above market leading rents by creating the correct product and experience around there. And also when the market gets more subdued, like for example, you could argue it's bounced back now, but during coronavirus or just out the back of it, then there might be a bit of a fluctuation in the very top of the market, the expensive stuff. I mean, we've got rooms that are kind of like in the we've got stuff across all of the areas. We've got stuff in 400-500 mark. We've got a lot of average kind of mid-term stuff around 700, but then we've got rooms that are like 850. So that's a wide spectrum there. And it might be the people who are looking at the very top. I mean, literally the 5% at the top. There's all of these sweet spots on pricing. What we've always said from the start is, I mean, every time my property manager will go out there and I'll say, right, I think this room is a 750 room. And she won't tell me, and she'll go and rent it for 800 just to prove me wrong. So it depends what time of the year you're renting. And it depends, what the product is and who the customer is at the time. One of the things I wanted to share was in the hotels we have a summer rate and a winter rate, and this means that in the summer rate, like now, staycation hotels are booming. We've got like 85% occupancy at the moment. People are paying a higher rate now, so we're outperforming. We're kind of we're taking, I think they call it taking a gain. So we're taking a gain. We're outperforming higher numbers on our daily rate, like the evening rate. For you to stay at a hotel now, you're going to pay slightly over what the base rate would be. And then in the winter, chances are they're going to need to be more competitive. So again, they need to probably come down a little bit. So we've taken the same approach with co-living. So I've said to my property managers and my community managers that, look, this is our target rate, but you can outperform in the summer and you can be highly competitive in the winter, because reality is it's exactly the same. Shared living, the rental market is seasonal, and it has highs and lows to the market. And if you just think of rent as one fixed thing, then I think that's another area where I think that we can take a lot of learnings from the hotel industry, because at the end of the day, if you outperform in the summer and you're more aggressive in the winter, well, you've ended up at you've aggregated to the same rate. And so we're a bit more dynamic on our rates there. So for example, someone goes in on an 850, and then the next person comes in on an 800, and it's back to 850. It's like, it depends where it is in the year. So our rents, we try and adapt based on where it is in the year, because we can rent a top end room for 850 in the middle of summer, but that might adjust by 50 quid. If you try and rent that in say January and February, it's probably 50 quid off that. Does it really make a difference? Well, not in the grand scheme of things, because across it your aggregate rate's the same. So it's just important to kind of understand how the rates work. And so ultimately you've got 3 grades of room. We have we've got the basic kind of the smaller room, the medium, and then you kind of like your biggest premium. And then you base the pricing based on whether you've got an ensuite or not an ensuite. So you've got 3. So we price based on square meterage. So square meterage plus facilities. Have you got an ensuite? Have you not? And square meterage, and then the other final thing I'll just say on room pricing is it's got to feel consistent. If you're putting out a load of properties across an area, if you put all your properties out based on all the rooms and you put them together, it's got to feel consistent so that you've got a consistent pricing basis for all of the rooms and the scales. So, there is an occasion sometimes where we've adjusted, where I've brought a few prices down because we've looked across it and thought, well, that doesn't make any sense because that's got no bathroom and that definitely doesn't, that seems overpriced. But yeah, that one's underpriced. And so I think if you can get that really nice balance and justification across your portfolio, it's just a nice way of kind of like rationalizing how you do all that pricing.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. Next question that's come in from Alex. Have you revisited any of your earlier projects and then upscaled them whilst they've still been tenanted?
Upscaled the design or upscaled the actual number of rooms and scheme of the layout?
I don't know, that's all I've got. Alex, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question better than I just did?
Hello, Alex.
Can you hear me, Stuart? Yeah,
I can. Yeah. Do you mean upscale the design or layout, or just?
Yeah, I mean upscale the design. Obviously, it's a big thing to change the layout and do extensions and stuff. I'm interested to know whether some of your earlier ones, whether or not you've upscaled in terms of the design, why you've got tenants in there.
You know what? The only one over the space of 6-7 years, there's only a few projects we've actually revisited. They've all dated very well. Where we've mainly changed them has been not really a style change. It's been a layout change. I think we had one. I can't remember what it was. There was one with all the crazy lighting hanging from the steel conduit lighting hanging from the ceiling. And what we found was, at the time, we just thought, oh, the TV goes next to the breakfast bar. We put it on there, and the sofa's over here. And then what we found is they said, oh, it's really far over there, but we've got this little area over here. And so I invested, I don't know how much it was. It wasn't a lot of money. I basically paid to have the TV moved. I had the electricals needed to be moved. I bought them a new sofa, reconfigured the space slightly, and moved a few things around. And that's one of those classic things where you try the space, and then actually turns out the customer tried it and gave me some feedback that actually the layout they loved it, but the layout just wasn't quite right. And for a very small minimal cost, I modified it, and then they were over the moon. You imagine how great that is if you're the customer and you said, oh, it'd be amazing if we just have one extra chair, and if we could just face the TV this way rather than it being over there, which is too far away, and I'm looking across the kitchen, and I've got this little zone here. And for a small change, we modified it, did a few little changes, bit of paint decorating, a few little things, and and they loved it. So that was, we've revisited a few. I have gone back. I mean, we have got a very active maintenance kind of side to what we do. So my property manager, we've got a couple of handyman, like general handyman. So we have like our main builders and contractors that build out the sites. And then we've got a handyman, and handyman can kind of do basic things, painting, decorating, tiling, timber work. Can't really do electrical or plumbing, that's more specialist. But so I can send him in there, and if we spot anything that's broken, or we can do inspections, we can kind of update it. So we're very proactive on the maintenance, because that was a key part of the experience. And we thought, well, I remember when I got early feedback from some projects which I had managed in Eastbourne. These were early shared living projects, and I remember the classic thing. Landlord turns up, meets the tenants. They're all in there. Shake everyone's hand, meet the landlord. How you getting on? How you finding it here? Blah blah blah. And you guarantee within 5 minutes they're saying the managing agent is beep. They're not doing anything. They come back to me. This tap's been broken and they haven't fixed it for 3 months. And this is a problem over here. And you, the landlord, you're standing there speaking to them. Yeah, no problem. Get it sorted next week for you. I mean, for us as landlords, we're like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, you got a tap. Yeah, unacceptable. We'll get that fixed straight away. Oh, you said there's a bit of damp in there. No worries. I'll get someone next week to investigate that, try and work out what that is. If we knew about these things, sometimes this is why the managing agents aren't particularly, managing agents are so busy with so many other properties, they're not as proactive on it. But what we try to do is, if the tenants contact us and there's an issue, we're usually onto it within days. So sometimes if it's urgent, we're there within 24 hours. But if it's kind of like things that need investigating, within 48 hours, we've kind of actioned something or looked at it. And so, of course, that means that a lot of the revisiting things because of maintenance and durability, we're on top of through maintenance. Revisiting things to do with, say, overall style. Although a lot of the stuff that you see is quite highly designed, it's actually quite neutral. I mean, it's very industrial, but it's neutral. It's not like we haven't gone retro or floral, or we haven't done anything that's very, although it's very commercial edged, it's not too niched that, let's say exposed bricks went out of fashion for whatever reason. I don't know, maybe they did. You know, we whitewashed that brick wall and we've suddenly got a Scandinavian loft feel. You know, we can, as long as the materials and the finishes are good, we can modify them quite easily. I would say some of the biggest modifications that we are making is usually to simple layout changes based on feedback. So like I mentioned about the fact that we thought that TV was in the best position and we guessed wrong and it was actually somewhere else. And, you know, they gave us that feedback. I mean, we wouldn't have known if we hadn't asked them, but they gave us the feedback. So yeah, that's how we've modified. That's how we've modified the spaces. You know, the co-working spaces that I mentioned earlier on, Alex, they were, so the original plan was they were an experiment that we were going to do in a room. I mean, that room could have been anything. It's going back 3 years ago. You know, that particular room in the first project could have been anything. And in fact, it was going to be a sui generis extra room. And we thought, well, we'll put it through into planning. But then since then, it's been so, and also we've got most of our money, if not all of our money, out of the project. So it was like, well, we don't need to cram in another room. And this facility makes the existing rooms even more desirable. So I kind of took the balance on that, which is actually I've got a product now that's got stuff that most of the other competition don't have. It appeals to more people. And so I haven't needed to go back and modify it. Should the style change, then actually going back and redesigning a space is probably something we'd probably quite enjoy and do anyway, because, you know, assuming, depending where it was, we could use that as an opportunity to try a few new things. I mean, depends which way you look at it. I mean, we kind of look at it as an opportunity, and, you know, every time we do the projects, we kind of experiment a few random new techniques. So it's worth, you know, there's an opportunity in these things, but you've got to have proactive maintenance to avoid the classic "I haven't been here for 6-7 years and it's falling apart" scenario. And then it's really about, I'd say, usability and layout of the space and what you think the space is going to be useful.
Yeah. Thanks, Stuart.
All right. That's good.
Okay, I've got another double-barreled question from Sudeep. The first one is, how many properties do you have, and then how many rooms do you have? And your tenants, are they locally based employees or are they London commuters?
The tenants are well, when you say commutees, because they're living and they're commuting to London. I think, because I'm a bit more one step removed from this now, because I've got the property managers and everything else. So I think only about 20% of our community commute to London. We've got a lot of freelancers, a lot of tech people, and a lot of people who are self-employed. Yeah, only that. There isn't a huge amount that do the dreaded commute journey up to London and back. Yeah, I think it's a small one, maybe 10 to 20% at most that do that. Okay, so yeah, that's how many. So what was the other part? What was the other double barrel part of that question? Not the number of units and everything else, but what was the other part to do with it?
No, that was it. It was just, were your tenants locally based, or were they London commuters?
They are mainly locally based, or they've moved to the area. I mean, we get a lot of people that they've moving to Brighton. I mean, Brighton, there's Brighton, Worthing. It's the south coast. You know, it's a lot of people kind of move into the area or move with business, and so you know, it's a mixture of people moving to the area, existing people looking for somewhere better to live. You know. They just want somewhere that they feel proud of. They like living there. They enjoy, enjoying living there. Is like, imagine the standard rental property. Enjoying living there's a bonus, isn't it? Normally it's like, oh, what can I get that I can afford that's half decent. Now, of course, it's wow. Now I can actually live somewhere, save money. I mean, we've got so some. You remember I talked to you about the gradings of the rooms. We've got some of our rooms are smaller, like that's sub 10 square meters. I remember we had one girl. She was she worked for a marketing agency, and she took one of our smaller rooms. It's only 8.5 square meter room, very well designed room. Had access to all the social spaces, the landscape garden, everything else, but it's a small room. Now she'd gone from being in a 1-bed flat with bills. I think she was probably 13. She was paying £1,350 a month. Anywhere between £1,200 and £1,350 a month. She went down to £600 a month. She saved. She lived in there, created loads of great friends, and helped save towards a deposit on a house. How good's that?
Absolutely.
So, I think there's an affordability thing, I think, to shared living as well. It's like, this isn't all bills in price. So if you can get that sweet spot between ticking the box, it's like you can help people get on the ladder. They can save money. They get more disposable income. And not only that, I remember, because that was going back a long time ago, when I would go out and do random viewings so that I got to meet people and ask a few questions. And I remember meeting her, a really nice lady, and she said, I'm in a 1-bed flat now, and I spend all my time on my flat, just me, and it's pretty lonely, and I'm young, and I don't want to be stuck on my own in a flat. I want to be meeting. She said, I don't want a party house, but I want to be social. I've got my mates at work. That's great, but I want to, she was kind of like, look, I'm spending all my time, spending all my money on this flat. I've got no disposable income after I'm paying for this flat, and my social life is limited. So it kind of ticked in quite well. Number of units, I think we're up to about. I don't count them anymore.
You're not going to take your shoes and socks off now, are you?
I think we've got about. Last time I think it's something like about 15 properties and 75 units, something like that. I mean, I've just signed another deal, which will probably add another, probably double that, but I think it's something like that. I mean, I'm in the process of selling some turnkey ones at the moment. I tried an experiment about a couple of years ago where I'd always sell one asset per year. So because I basically work on about 5-6 projects a year, and every year I sell one. So it's 5-6 come in, I always sell one off. And it just provides some liquidity in with everything that I'm doing. It's just a good thing. You've got multiple revenue streams. And I don't get too precious about that whole thing of don't sell anything. And I found that there was a market for people that wanted turnkey. They just want the whole thing ready-made, high yielding. So basically, someone who's done the whole thing for them and created the high yielding, and they just buy it ready-made and done. So I'm just testing I've just released onto market a few projects, and then that'll take some off my units. But then I've got these extra larger projects that are going, so I don't get too precious about the number of units. As soon as you covering, like, you're paying your bills and your income and everything else, I kind of adapt my portfolio based on what I need. And because at the end of the day, it depends which way you kind of look at this. It's like, well, if you're working on a certain number of projects a year, it's like, well, you don't need, there's only so much you actually need. And actually, I'd say that each project we do, we only pick projects where we think we could create something amazing. So I'm not going to pick a project where I can just cram a load of people in and then do it. It hits a load of numbers, but I'm not proud of it. It doesn't align to my values. It doesn't align to anything else I'm doing. I've got to be able to, I guess there is an element of emotional purchasing now where you could argue black and white purchasing is just numbers, blah, blah, blah. But, this is, when I sold my other businesses and went into this is, I'm proud that it's a lifestyle business. It's a lifestyle. I want to create stuff that, I don't outsource loads of stuff. I'm heavily involved in the creative direction of what we do because, I could take a step back, scale it, and, double and quadruple the projects I am, bring in the big pension funds to invest into what we do and scale it out. But, what am I doing that for? Am I just doing that to add some more zeros on it? Because at the end of the day, if you're in property and you're doing the right thing, you're going to make the money that you need. So this is more about longevity, purpose, and legacy of what you want to do and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to affect, whose life you're trying to affect as doing this. So I think I'm always looking at my portfolio as a fluid thing. So although it's that size now, the bigger projects that I'm looking at now, I have a single project, the one new one that's going through now, that will, over half of my entire portfolio is done in one project again. So I would probably at that point think, well, okay, I don't then need all of that. So what I'll do is I'll release some turnkey ones and sell them off, and which is the opposite. Some of my friends are just like, how could you ever sell a property? How could you ever release and sell one? I was like, well, if you take that mentality, you're only ever gonna, if it's a career and it's long term, there's got to be liquidity. There's got to be liquidity in everything you do. And if you're working on a lot of projects, then as you probably know, that things come up and budgets move and everything else, and it's just I don't want that to be a stressful process. I don't want it to be a job where I'm not enjoying the process. And for me, liquidity is a really important one. So for me, it's about multiple revenue streams. Multiple revenue streams in property is really important. And whether that comes from turnkey, whether it comes from portfolio building, whether it comes from my own portfolio, whether it comes from land planning gain and development opportunities, whether it's because I'm mentoring and training people, they're all multiple revenue streams that all come in and drive my loan to value and my debt leverage down, which in turn affects your overall experience of this whole journey that we have in property.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one other question that's just come in. Would you replicate this in other parts of the country? Are there any minimum demographics you would consider?
Well, I nearly did. I did many years ago. It's probably 6 years ago. I did. So when I was building my businesses, I always had a non-exec chairman, and a non-exec chairman was someone that comes in your business and they basically mentor you. So it's like you're building a business, and HR and all the other stuff, and you learn how to do a business along the way, and eventually you're like, I need to really know how to do. I don't know how to get to the next stage. So you hire a non-exec chairman, they come into the business and they show you how to get to the next stage. So we'd always been doing that. So when I moved into property, I had no issue with paying for a mentor because we'd always done it in businesses anyway. And so I had a mentor for a year, and then I went on to Simon Zucci's course, the mastermind course. So I did that for a year, and that was a really good way of being able to kind of learn and kind of take things up to the next level. So that was, I used that as kind of like my leapfrog, my training into it. So I've forgotten the original question. I've forgotten the original question there. That's really bad.
The question was about replicating it in other parts of the country.
Yes, so that's why. Yes, so the reason I mentioned that, there wasn't the reason I mentioned that. The reason I mentioned it is because when I was on Simon Zucci's training, and I was looking across the country, and I was operating in Brighton and Hove. And during the training, as many people do, I looked across the whole of the UK, did my research, and I thought I can go north. I go north, everything's cheaper, and I'll do that. And I did. I looked across all these different locations. I visited a whole load of them, and then I settled on, at the time, it was where in Manchester was it? Salford. Salford didn't have Article 4. Manchester was spiking quite, as it was getting very popular. We could see what was happening with London and businesses moving that way. And so I was just like, I think that's a good investment area. I did all the data. Data seemed to stack up. And I was going to invest quite heavily into Manchester. And I did some projects. I secured some commercial conversion projects. I think one was like a 20 bed shared living project. And I just had endless problems getting reliable builders and trades that I could trust on the ground. Because if you take southern money and you move it up too far up north, you don't want to be ripped off. You don't want to. You're going to be remotely managing it, everything else. And I just couldn't get the reliable trades on that project, and I didn't have 100% faith. At least down here, I know the trades, I know the businesses. I'm face to face. I'm on site more often, and so in the end, I decided, right, that's it. I'm not I'm not doing that. I'm not going north just for the sake because it's cheaper. And so I decided to double down and do the area that's more difficult. And I thought that if I spent twice as much effort making the area that's difficult stack, that eventually I had faith that I would be able to break through in it, and that would give me a market advantage because most people can't, because it's difficult. So that's exactly what I did. I just doubled down and initially you think areas don't work because you can't make it a stack, you can't get the leads, you can't get the deals. And it's only because, you've only just looked at it and you haven't gone, inch wide, mile deep. There are deals everywhere. It's just you haven't heard about them, and the deals have been done behind the scenes and people have got there first. It's like when you really get to know an area, you can do that. And that's how I've managed to do it in Brighton Hove. Brighton Hove is such a difficult area to make it work because it's all who you know, and a lot of this stuff is direct to vendor and off market, and you've got to move quicker. Most of my deals are done in 30 minutes. It's conversation, viewing, assessment done off market. It's never even hit the market. So you've got to be quick. You've got to be nimble. You've got to be able to do due diligence quickly. You've got to know your area. But it has allowed me to grow a portfolio in the area that I grew up in. So it was worth the effort to do it. So coming back to the question, I wanted to invest in the area that I felt most passionate about and I grew up in. And the reason I did that was because I had a number of friends who were very successful investors who owned hundreds of properties. And they all said to me similar things, which is when they started to get, when they were older and they were not going into retirement, but they were thinking of retirement. It wasn't that far away. They were all saying that they were selling off stuff that was far away. They didn't want to deal with the stuff that was far away. They started to sell it off. So then again, you've got to come up and say, well, I don't really want to buy that stuff. I just sell it off because it's too far away. So I was like, actually, I'm going to double down to this location. I mean, now, interestingly, so although we do everything in Sussex, we're basically Sussex, East and West Sussex at the moment. And, we've now reached a stage with our portfolio, with the developments we do, that we would potentially go further out. Now, if I had made that decision early on and I'd gone out and I'd gone north, I wouldn't have got anything down this way because I would have put all my effort to take what would have been the easier choice and to go where my money goes further because it just seems like a cheaper. And you've got to make it stack and all the other things. I wouldn't have had the capital appreciation on my main portfolio. So main portfolio, all in prime locations in Sussex, where in 10 to 20 years, those sites are going to be performing and bringing out chunks of money because they're in great locations, they've got capital appreciation. If I had invested all that money further up north, I'd have good cash flow, but I'm not going to get the same capital appreciation. And I wanted a blend. And I think it's really important. So I guess my learning from it is that once you've got the base of a core portfolio, and this is diversified portfolio for anyone, get your core base of stuff which you're passionate about, which is near to you, everything else. But if you want to then supplement that with some additional, like a secondary location or third location that is just about cash flow, but some of your sites are about cash flow and capital appreciation, that blending is perfectly fine. So like, would I go north now? Potentially I would. But if I had made that choice many years ago, it would have restricted my growth and the ability to really drill down and make it work in the area, which is the area I really wanted to do it, but it was difficult. So yeah, I can transfer the concept and approach and methodologies can be transported to any location where there are professionals. It would still need market research on facilities, businesses in the area, opportunities, jobs, population, infrastructure, investment into the area, all those things that are indicators of, vibrant, opportunities for young people and, the wider kind of demographic. But then that doesn't mean transporting my products into that area. If you imagine, you could literally pick a location and say, I'm going to create the best product in that market. It's not necessarily what I've done. It's just the fact that you've done a market research, that young professionals and that wider demographic, anywhere from 25 to 50 or whatever it is, there's a wide demographic there. And if you just create the right product in the right location, and you're not fighting it out down the bottom on price because you've got the products everyone wants, the principles are applicable in the same way as I took the principles that I shared with you this evening, and then we put it into the hotels. So that the hotels are the same thing. We took the model of inefficient guest houses. We stripped out all the inefficient rooms, and we turned them into more rentable rooms to get the valuation up. It's like what we do in shared living. Within the whole service layer, we created the amazing product. We brought technology in. We brought key code technology in. We brought concierge. We brought digital iPads for digital check-in. No staff on site, fully systemized and optimized. We brought all of that in, and we used the same approach, I guess, to create the best product in that market. So now we have a small hotel, or two small hotels now, in Brighton that outperform any of the other guest houses and small hotels, because we've systemized it and we took all of the learnings that we would do into property. We've just applied it from the long stay market to the short stay market. So whether you're location to location, or whether you're from one sector to another, all the principles are the same. They're all transferable. They still need due diligence. They still need research, but they are transferable.
Make sure I've unmuted myself before I start talking again. I mean, that is absolutely fascinating. Does anybody else have any questions? Nothing else has come up in the chat. So,
Chris and Alex, obviously, just because I can see you. Whereabouts are you both based?
You can hear me. I'm in Watford, Stuart.
Oh, you're in Watford?
Watford, yeah. So we've got an existing HMO portfolio where we've built roughly sort of one unit a year.
Yeah.
We've got about 43 rooms now.
Yeah.
But when we started, like you said, the quality was absolutely dire. So ours stood out, but there's still magnolia boxes, white woodwork, brown carpets, but they were a massive level above the rest. But now but our later ones are a bit more funky. We've got grass on the wall and a bit more design.
Yeah, it's good.
The reason behind my question is, we've now got the challenge of bringing our magnolia boxes up a level whilst maintaining cash flow and tenants living in there. So
I mean, you can okay, so we've got a few properties where when you have a changeover of tenant, that's a prime opportunity to get into a room.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think you can update the rooms when you have your changeovers, so that's easy. And then anything you do in the social spaces, you've just got to you've got to just have your handyman that can jump in there during the day and just blitz it and do it in stages. So we have done some kind of modifications and stuff, and you can work around them. And you're only going to be using a standing handyman to do it. It's not going to be you're not going to go for a major, change to it. It's more a cosmetic kind of like a look and feel than anything else. So like for example, tiling in a kitchen can be done in a few days. Simple stuff in the lounge can be done in a few days, and you can work around people if they know it's being modified and updated. They'll be happy to kind of work around it. So I think there's a number of things you can, and even with kitchens now, imagine you had a kitchen, you can still use the same carcasses and start just change all the doors. You can refresh your kitchen and new tiles, new doors, keep the carcasses. Or your existing kitchen, new worktop. There's loads of techniques you can use to very quickly make a few quick win changes to kind of take your product kind of up a level without disturbing existing customers too much.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
But the fact that you're doing it is brilliant, because imagine your competitors that aren't doing it.
Yeah.
You're doing it, they're not doing it. So they're not doing it. They've instantly got a problem, because the minute you do it, their rooms are now going to get rented after your rooms. So it becomes like a self-fulfilling thing. It's this is about I mentioned it a few times. This is like an insurance policy. Why would you not want to ensure you're definitely you're kind of on the pulse of making sure that your rooms are being rented ahead of other people? Because every year you've built this portfolio. like I've built my portfolio, and every year, you know, I'm sure training courses will spit out new investors, and you know they'll go onto the market and they'll buy more properties, and you know the competition will always be there. But you know, if that means that we're always on our toes, that's not a bad thing.
No, I agree.
And Chris, where are you from?
Oh, Hampstead, so just down the road from Ufford, not far away. But I'm an inspiring investor. I haven't started yet. I run an architectural practice, and I've been working for developers for years, helping them to make a fortune and profit out of development. But I've realised that it's about time at this age that I've reached, I need to do something about it.
Yeah,
and this area of co-living is something that particularly appealed to me when looking around. People were talking about, oh, you start with a buy-to-let and you've got to go for an HMO. But it was just a repeated product that you've seen and perhaps reaching a saturation level. But I really like your innovative approach. You're turning this thing on its head. And I was talking about lifestyle changes and life cycle. You can see opportunities to apply this at different stages in life, and I sort of see almost cradle to grave. Older person's accommodation could probably work in a similar way. We've got to change the way we've been living. It's not so sustainable because we're not going to build the houses we need. I remember back in 2000 we were millions behind what we should have been building, and we've never caught up in 20 years. So there's got to be a different way of doing things. And I see that this style of living.
I think your background in the architectural stuff, you know, that's I mean, the thing about architectural is very much design centric as well. So, and design centric is also people and human centric, which means that, you know, you're considering the space architecturally for the use that it is. And, you know, I think property investment development has a monetary side to it, which is really about financials, and that's really important. But if you're going to create a scheme, you know, like build out a scheme, whether that's small one, PD, bigger scheme, whatever that is, you want to, you know, as you know, from the architectural side, the biggest gains in any of it start at the architectural level. And this is why I always have that, you know, the slide about the interior design and the full one. Because interior design makes you can take an existing room, existing space, and it's a layer. But architectural is modifying, it's transforming, and you are absolutely, you're at that point, you're adapting and you're creating. And so I think that really what we're doing is more akin to architectural space environment design, and then we're optimizing it to create the best scheme so that financially for us as investors it stacks up. That's about high yielding, and we create a better high yielding. We take a building that someone else would do, and with a 30,000 gross income, and we create a building with a 50, 60,000 gross income, because not only have we created a great product, we've optimized it. We've literally taken that building and we've seen ways to transform it into something that is not only high yielding, but also super desirable and in line with what the customer wants.
Yeah, customer
led. Whereabouts are you based? You said you were
St Albans.
Yeah. You just started your journey.
We've started very recently. That's my wife and myself, and we're looking right now at HMOs, possibly in Coventry.
Yeah. Okay. I know. I think I know some people over there. Yeah.
So it's a exciting new kind of journey for us. So looking forward to it.
In Coventry, do you think that you will you do your first project by buying an existing one and updating it, or literally doing conversion?
Taking an existing HMO and really putting it in through its paces.
Okay.
We saw one very recently. It needs a lot of refurb, a lot of modernisation. The current tenants, their rents are, I mean, that's why they've been living there for 10 years. Rents are about $1,100 a month. But for that area, rents could easily achieve $2,700 a month.
Are you? Is there any Article 4 in Coventry restricting HMOs?
No, none at the moment.
another little tip, which is quite an interesting one on your kind of like early projects, is if you ever see in Coventry when you're looking a 7 or more bed HMO,
Yeah.
marketed at a bricks and mortar value,
Yeah.
if you find one that is run down, it's 7, 8, 9 bed, whatever it is, and it's an older landlord who's had it many years, it's bricks and mortar, he sells at bricks and mortar, you modernise it,
Yeah.
because it's sui generis, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many rooms, you can, if you want to, if you need to, because obviously up north, potentially you can go into Bay or Shawbrooks, you can move into commercial valuation and recycle all your money out if you want. If you're going to hold it for like 10, 20 plus years, if you're going to be short term,
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
keep it bricks and mortar. But it's just a little technique. It's like we only have a small portion of our stuff that is in commercial values. And I think that if you're dealing with anything up to 6 rooms, I think bricks and mortar it makes more sense. I don't think you try and push a 5 or 6 bed into commercial. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But when you're dealing with sui generis, by definition, it's commercial. So the lenders, if you go to Kent Reliance and Precise, they'll value it in the same kind of way, which will have a little bit of an uplift in it. But generally speaking, it will be valued in a HMO value. But if you go to like Shawbrooks, they'll do it on a multiplier of yield.
Okay.
So I mean, it's quite significant. I mean, in certain areas of the south, your commercial value may be less than the bricks and mortar, which seems mad. But that's if you're in a prime area, your bricks and mortar value will be so high that you don't need to do a commercial valuation. You wouldn't need to. The further you go up north, if you've got the right kind of sui generis large project with more rooms, then you could, if it stacks up, because if you suddenly got an 8, 9 bed, with the revenue coming in from that, you may stack up that actually going with someone like Shawbrooks paying 5% rather than say 3.5% is actually palatable, and it's okay because there's more revenue in, but your multiplier might mean the difference between all your money coming out as opposed to leaving quarter of it or 30, 40% of it in. So I only mention that as a technique because it was one of the kind of like early techniques that we used.
Okay, that's useful. Thank you. Yeah.
A lot of people sell off, the 7, 8, 9s, and they're just on standard bricks and mortar, and you're looking to get a bit of traction early, and it might just be a little, little technique.
Well, it's been a fantastic presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I look forward to the book coming out.
Brilliant. And, that's it's taken me about a year after write that.
I want to get it. Will you sign it for me?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll give you a bit of help and stuff. But if I can help out in any way, I will. But that's just the reason I put everything in the book is because it's more about everything I've done is just a journey. I've just learned stuff along the way. I wasn't, although I kind of my background was flipping properties. All I've done is I've kind of taken my learnings from the tech world and design world, and I've applied them in. I've learned a load of stuff along the way, and the kind of the niche. Well, that's why the book is about co-living, because I'm not writing about loads of other strategies. I'm just co-living is the main niche that I've done, and most of the work we pioneered in is been in that niche. So everything I've written in there is really about how you can create better shared living that in turn can create the good numbers and everything else you want, but also can create a community and an experience. So I must admit, I did somewhat underestimate the task of writing the book. You hear of people online and say, "Oh yeah, I knocked out a book on in 2 months." I'm like, this is taking it's like a year and a half. It's taken a crazy amount of time to write this book. Yeah. And even then, I had to do a couple of book workshops with the author, and it came back in and then adapt it. Actually, could I just ask one question? Is that all right? Now, obviously, I've written the book. I've sent it to the author, yeah, and I've put in there a load of stuff in about creating the spaces, the community, and legislation and planning and how to. Could you, each one of you, tell me what you, just in case I've missed something, what, based on kind of co-living and HMO's co-living, what are the top things that you would love to see in that book? maybe start with you, Chris. What would be the top things that you would love to read in that book? Is that book, it's not expensive training or anything. It's like, it's just the price of a book. What would be the most important things you'd love to see in that book about co-living?
Your story, because
Okay.
I think it's you've been successful, and your heartache that you've gone through to get to where you are. I think that's a very powerful motivator to people when you're not sure that passion.
Okay, yeah. I've got a section about values and mission, which is quite nice. Which is all about how you get that area right about values and mission. Anything else you would want to know? So if you're going to go in and
figures are always important because whether it's worthwhile or not.
How to stack numbers, how to stack deals, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and picking up on what somebody else said earlier about transferring this somewhere else, to what sort of areas would suit this style of development. Definitely those that wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, so how you can pick the areas and what's transferable.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Sudeep, what from your perspective, what kind of?
Okay, three things that come to mind immediately. Any practical tips, advice, pitfalls, things to look out for. Then to show how a property is transformed from the point of purchase to the point of getting it ready for marketing.
Oh, that's interesting. The property journey life cycle.
Yeah.
Okay, funny enough, I talk about the customer life cycle, but well, how does that property do its journey? That's an interesting one.
And also the sort of marketing that you do.
Yeah, I've got a section all on marketing and brand building.
And also I suppose the kind of thing about filtering out the demographic to get the correct tenants.
Oh yeah.
And the kind of tenant types, customer types, the sort of mixes, and also how do you keep the neighbours on side?
Communication.
Yeah.
And neighbours. That's a good one. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, thanks for that, Sudeep. That's brilliant feedback. Alex, what about yourself?
I think from my point of view, I'd be interested to see your views, Stuart, on how you see the next 10 years, the next decade playing out from a co-living point of view, and this hybrid of co-living, co-working. We've now got the big black swan event with COVID, now forcing people to work from home, companies being more confident about their employees working from home. So I think that's a major shift in what will be the existing HMO space. A Mickey desk from IKEA in the corner of a bedroom with a £5 chair doesn't cut it anymore.
Yeah,
I would say you need multiple spaces, maybe separate spaces in houses and in gardens. So I'll be interested to see your vision of the next decade and how your crystal ball, how you see that panning out.
That's brilliant. That's good. Julie, what?
Yeah, I think for me, there's two elements of it. The first element is how you actually find the property in the first place with the vision to see what it's going to look like at the end. So obviously similar to what Sudeep was saying about the property journey, but when you're genuinely just out there looking for a property, how you can see beyond what it already looks like now to what it's going to look like with your, like you said, you brought that 2 to 3 bed up to a 6 bed. How did you visualize that? How did you see that coming together?
Yeah, so basically how to find suitable properties and how to spot the opportunities for conversion.
And just my other point of it is just your sort of tenant find and how they fit into the properties with the other occupants. And obviously you're self-managing in a way, so you've got your own management team rather than using an agent, and how that works.
Oh yeah, I've got a section on self-manage or. So, but the tenant find process, I haven't got anything on there. And then I think the opportunities for conversion. That's good.
Actually, I've got a
A
couple
live
of others.
example of on the fly guerrilla user research right there. That's brilliant. The good thing is, so what I've done is I've written the book, but what I've done is I've deliberately, because I get this period of a couple of months while they're editing it, I know that there's a 10% I can adapt and I can tweak, because it's in the editing stage. So any edits that I put in, and there's definitely a few bits there where I've got stuff on like the hybrids and next decade future, but I haven't adapted it a little bit into the Black Swan events and some of the other stuff. And I guess because I have to reflect coronavirus and post-corona gross pandemic whenever we come out of it, is so that's great. Thank you very much, guys. That's really just it's just useful to. It's that classic thing. It's the same as the places we create. We think we know what people want, and you create what you think people want, but then people tell you what they want. So it's a kind of like prime example of why that's so important. So thank you, I really appreciate that.
Fantastic. Brilliant, thank you. So does anybody else have any further questions? Because I've just noticed we're nearly 9:30, for goodness sake. I don't know where the time went. That was rather brilliant. So has anybody got any questions? Chris, Sudeep, Alex, Dot?
Yeah, Julie, I've got one quick technical question, really. Stuart, you mentioned about on your sort of view about all the components for successful co-living, mesh Wi-Fi, etc. What do you use for tenant apps? You mentioned about.
So we've got a few different ones we use. So we use the system called Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
We use Arthur. We use their app, but their app's not community apps. What we do is we use the apps to report maintenance and issues and tenancy documents and all that. On top of, we still have a backup of Dropbox and all the other stuff, just in case their system goes down. And then what we do at the moment is our community managers manually send out everything to do with events and things, just because, that's what we do in the hotels. So I think I was speaking to someone the other day saying, well, our notion of community management is almost more like concierge, because, effectively I'm paying people that work for me that can pick up the phone and organize emails and do it. And that kind of works okay at the moment. But in the future, I'd like the community element and the memberships and the offers and the discounts and the events all to be in one place. Now, Arthur doesn't offer that. It's just management. It's not community. There are some new technologies coming out at the moment. One of them is called Coho. And I know the guy, Von, who's building it. He assures me that this is what he's building, but it's only in beta. It's only just come out. It's not, he's only just developed it. And there's a few other ones like that where we're kind of beta testing them. They're not quite mature enough, or they've reached that point where they've had enough hours development in there and bug fixing to take them on your compliance level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there are some very promising looking apps that can maybe deal more with just not only the compliance and the due diligence of and the legislation of running a portfolio, but then the extra layer of the community and everything else. So at the moment, they're kind of two disparate things, but it doesn't really matter at the moment that the concierge part is manual, because people love that, because it's a person, it's a real person. So we're able to do that. A letting agent wouldn't be able to do that, but we can. So yeah, we use apps. We've been using the ones in Arthur, but equally we've been trialing some of these other ones, but we haven't rolled them out fully, just because I don't want to roll something completely fully out until I know it's fully integrated to all the other stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Arthur's good. It's just it's like anything. There's pros and cons to every piece of software out there, and you can spend endless time. Arthur does a very good job of doing the compliance and everything else, and the guys are pretty receptive of fixing things. Their apps are. They have an app for tradesmen. I don't know if you've ever used it. There's an app for tradesmen. If a tradesman works for you, they have to log onto the app. Now, I don't know about you, but if you have if you have a kind of like an electrician you only use once or twice a year, they're not going to go and create a brand new password and log in for an app just to go and get a few pieces of work. It just doesn't work. your handyman might do that, and he might get regular work, but it doesn't work for the other tradesmen. So I think there's some things that they haven't quite worked through the usability of how that works for trades. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of different systems to use. So we're using the one that ticks the most boxes at the moment, and then we just put a layer of concierge on the top.
Thanks.
All right.
Stuart, I was just browsing through your website, and there's all the fantastic examples that you've been talking about. But it would be really nice to sort of experience the experience. Pop down there sometime and just see how these places, feel walking around them, and the atmosphere in them.
The only challenge with that is that when we get them filled, so there's one opportunity where we do the photo shoot, we do everything in there, and that opportunity, once they fill, we can't really walk around all the rooms, because obviously it's people in there. We open the room. Yeah, but the room is no longer, it's just a room with all your stuff chucked in there. What I tell you what I can do, which I'll have a project coming up quite soon, and got a few projects that are going to be finishing in the. What I can do is I can do like a Matterport virtual, like literally full immersive 3D thing, and I've been planning. I was going to do it on some previous projects, but we just ran out of time. A friend of mine, Luke Spikes, he does that, and he does Matterport, and you can literally walk around the room and have full 3D. You can just do it on your computer, but I'm going to plan to do some of those. So it means that you can get in there and walk around in there, even when you can't get into the space.
Yeah, that'd be really nice.
Probably a quicker way of doing it. By the time we can actually, because there's only such a short period of time where I can actually get in, and then the photo shoots happen, then people are dying to get in there, and before we know it, we've got like days, and then that's it. Can't get in after that. Well, otherwise you get into the social, but we can't get into any of the rooms, and you can't really do inspections, take a load of people around on looking into the room. So yeah, that's more of a challenge. But yeah, I can send you. I can organise one of the next projects, like a 3D mapping of the.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and that'd be the same thing. Be very close to the monitor. It's really big, and it would kind of feel like you're in it, and you can move around. Yeah. Have you ever looked around one of those Matterport 3D renders?
Sorry, Matterport. I haven't heard of that. The sort of walkthrough. I've done a walkthrough, fly-through. 3D visualizations. But,
Matterport for the kind of mapping. I mean, they're definitely one of the smoothest, nicest experiences. I mean, you get the classic thing where people put a camera in the middle of the room and it does a 360, and then you press on the door and you go through. But what Matterport does is it has points in the room, and if you tap forward in any direction, you just start to move and you slide, and it means that you can kind of drift and move through the space, and it feels like you're in the space. If you just do a 360, jump to next room 360, I mean, it's obviously a cheaper way to do it, but Matterport allows you to really kind of explore and walk through.
Yeah.
And, anyway, that's the one I like. Yeah. But I can certainly organise something like that for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Brilliant.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, thank you, Stuart. It's been really, really informative. Thank you so much, and a fantastic presentation as well.
Thank you, and much appreciated the feedback, so that I can go through the nuggets of information and see if there's some bits to add into the draft script.
Fantastic. Thank you again. So if nobody else has got any questions, I will bring the meeting to a close.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thanks very much, guys. Take care.
Brilliant.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.